All right, we're about to tackle one of the darkest, most difficult chapters in all of human history. In this explainer, we're going to look at the systematic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of millions of people by the Nazi regime during the Holocaust. Now, I know this is a tough topic, but it's one that we absolutely have to understand. 6 million. That's the number of Jewish people who were murdered. It's a staggering figure, and it was the central crime of the Holocaust. But the Nazis' net of terror, it was cast so much wider than that. They also targeted millions of other people, Roma, political dissidents, homosexuals, and many more. It's truly one of the most horrific war crimes ever committed. So, to really get a handle on how a catastrophe of this scale could even happen, we're going to walk through 5 key parts. First, the shocking discovery of the camps. Then, the seeds of hatred that fueled it all. After that, the system of mass murder they created. We'll also look at the incredible courage shown in the darkest of times, and finally, the legacy of liberation. And to do that, we're actually going to start at the end, with the discovery. Okay, so picture this. World War II is finally drawing to a close. Allied soldiers are pushing across Europe, and they're starting to stumble upon something, the truth. And let me tell you, they were in no way prepared for the absolute horror they were about to find. Let's take Auschwitz, for example, probably the most notorious of all the death camps. When the first Soviet forces got close, they were essentially going in blind. They had no intelligence reports, no real idea of what was waiting for them. And what they found? Well, it was beyond anything they could have possibly imagined. What they found were the survivors. And the state these people were in, it just shows you the final chilling act of Nazi cruelty. See, even as the Nazis were running away, they left thousands of emaciated, skeletal prisoners behind, basically just leaving them to die. So when faced with this evidence of just unimaginable inhumanity, the entire world was left with one single haunting question. How? How could something like this possibly have happened? Well, to even begin to answer that, we have to rewind. We have to look at the roots of it all. Because the Holocaust didn't just appear out of nowhere with gas chambers. No, it started with an idea, a toxic ideology that had been poisoning societies for centuries. And the Nazis, they weaponized it with terrifying efficiency. At the very heart of this ideology is something called anti-Semitism. It's a deep-seated hostility, a prejudice against Jewish people. Some have even called it history's oldest hatred. What the Nazis did was take this ancient prejudice, twist it up with a bunch of fake pseudo-scientific racial theories, and then they made it the absolute bedrock of their government policy. And the speed at which everything escalated is it's breathtaking. Think about it. In 1933, Adolf Hitler takes power, and almost right away, the first concentration camp, Dachau, is opened, at that point for political prisoners. But by tapping into and ramping up that deep-seated anti-Semitism, it only took 5 years for the violence to just explode out into the open with an event called Kristallnacht. And that brings us to the actual machinery of the genocide. See, the Nazis didn't just hate, they were organized. They built this cold, bureaucratic system, a machine, really, designed for one single purpose, mass murder. And they gave it a chilling name, the final solution. Now, before we get into the details of that system, we really need to understand at that turning point I just mentioned, Kristallnacht. It's also known as the Night of Broken Glass. And this was no random riot, okay? This was a pogrom, organized by the state, where mobs went out and attacked thousands of Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues. It was a terrifying preview of the horrors that were on the way. This whole methodical process, it pretty much unfolded in 3 main stages. First came segregation. Jewish people were forced out of their homes and crammed into overcrowded ghettos. The second step was deportation. From the ghettos, they were systematically put on trains. And the final destination? Well, that was a whole network of concentration and extermination camps, built for one of 2 things, slave labor or mass murder. And the absolute epicenter of this whole horrific system was Auschwitz. It opened in 1940 and just grew and grew into this massive complex. It became the largest, the deadliest of all the Nazi camps. It's really become the symbol of the Holocaust itself. But even in the middle of all this absolute darkness, there were these incredible flickers of light. We have to talk about the people who, staring down unimaginable risk, made a choice. They chose to act with courage. They chose to act with humanity. Let me tell you about a guy named Karl Lutz. He was a Swiss diplomat in Budapest, and what he did was brilliant. He basically used the Nazis' own obsession with paperwork against them. He started issuing these official-looking protection letters, and with them, he saved an estimated 60,000 Hungarian Jews from being deported. He literally turned the regime's cold, bureaucratic machine on itself. Or how about the unbelievable bravery of Stanislava Lishlinska? Get this, she was a prisoner and a midwife inside Auschwitz. And in that place, she delivered around 3,000 babies. When the camp authorities ordered her to murder the newborns, she just refused. In the very heart of a death camp, she chose life. Resistance wasn't always about rescue either. It also took other forms. Take Virginia Hall, an American spy. She was busy organizing sabotage missions and building rescue networks all across Nazi-occupied France. And she was so good at it, so effective at messing up their operations, that the Gestapo, the secret police themselves, gave her a nickname, the most dangerous of all Allied spies. So finally, let's talk about the aftermath, because for the survivors, liberation wasn't the end of the story. Not by a long shot. Their struggle was far from over, and it left the entire world with this profound responsibility, the duty to remember. You have to understand, right after the war, hundreds of thousands of survivors had nowhere to go. Their homes, their families, everything was gone. So the Allies set up what were called displaced persons camps. These were basically temporary homes, a place to offer some shelter and a starting point for these deeply traumatized people to begin the impossible task of rebuilding their lives. And that connection is so important. It's why our memory of the Holocaust is so closely tied to the moment of liberation. I mean, think about it. International Holocaust Remembrance Day is observed on the anniversary of the day Auschwitz was liberated. We have to remember the horror, absolutely, but we anchor that memory in the moment that the gates were finally thrown open. So we have the history, we have the evidence, the testimonies from the survivors. The facts are not up for debate. The real challenge, the one that falls to every single generation, including ours, is to answer this question. How do we carry this memory forward? And how do we make absolutely sure that something like this can never, ever happen again?